Climate change is really driving a lot of migration, both within countries and across borders. And we don't really have a legal framework set up for people who are being displaced because of climate change. There's no such thing as a climate refugee. That legal category doesn't exist. And so there's not an obvious way to protect people's human rights if they have to cross a border because of climate change. And we shouldn't underestimate the extent to which this is already happening. A lot of people who are officially categorized as, say, economic migrants, actually the root cause of why they had to move is climate change. So if you think about a smallholder farmer who is being affected by drought, they can no longer make a good enough livelihood where they live, and they have to move into a city, right? We don't call that climate migration, but fundamentally that's what it is.
The Houston area and Harris County, which is actually the county that Houston is inside, is a very unique place in the U.S. in the sense that about 25% of the population of Houston is actually foreign-born, which means 1 in 4 people you meet on the street could be foreign-born. Also, the county as a whole, which is Harris County, is actually, according to stats or statistics, the most diverse county in the U.S. in terms of the mixture of race ethnicity groups. So that presents a unique challenge, right? Because when we're talking about climate change and the impact of climate change on health and on livelihood in general, we have a scenario where you have to be mindful of the different types of groups of people that are in the city and in the county, such that when it comes time to, say, respond to a disaster or basically provide assistance after a disaster, you don't always have a situation where you can just use English to communicate, right? So you have to be mindful of the different parts of the cities where English may not be the language of use, and to be able to respond accordingly in that regard.
So this is a big phenomenon that's only going to increase more and more. And so as a result, we really need to get some frameworks into place for the proactive protection of the human rights of anyone who's forced to move. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the ways that some countries are talking about this is from a national security perspective. The U.S. has a history of doing support for policing or military training, et cetera, et cetera. That's not the kind of programming that we need, right? We do need to support developing countries to make sure that people are not forced to move from where they live. Nobody wants to be displaced. And the way that we can do that is actually through climate finance, right? So financing adaptation programs in developing countries, so allowing communities to have the resources to actually adapt to oncoming climate change, climate impacts, or even supporting new green renewable economies in other countries through public financing from wealthy countries. That would kind of regenerate economies in such a way that people maybe wouldn't have to move, right? That's the kind of support we need, not support for more policing or support for authoritarian regimes, which is more the history of U.S. foreign assistance in this area, to be honest.
Minus the political rhetoric, I think it's fundamental that most people that are moving north, let's say, are looking for better life, right? So there's got to be a way for the system that exists right now, the systems that exist, or maybe new systems that need to be developed to accept, folks coming up north without, demonizing them or basically making them dehumanizing them. So that's something we have to start thinking more and more about, even if it's just because of the impacts of climate change, which will continue to happen even if we mitigate now, we're going to see